I'm not really very good at that. Yeah, I got it. I'm not usually pretty good at that.
Okay.
Usually because I tend to live more so in that fantasy future world, trying to create
You
what I'm
stay
looking
there.
for. I
Sure.
stay there. So by the time I get there, I have a tendency, if I'm being fully self-aware, to say, I've already been there. Like I've already been expecting XYZ to happen for so long. It's like when it happens, it's kind of like, okay, great. Okay, now let's move, onward and upwards. We want 10,000 followers. That'll be, I think, a good foundation to then 100,000 followers, and that'll be a good foundation to 1,000,000 followers. And the purpose in that is two parts. It's franchisee support and it's franchise development. The purpose in Pet Waste Millionaire brand in terms of what will I get out of it in the long term? Okay, I want to make a difference. I want to provide influence, and I want to help elevate all business owners, not just people that are interested in being franchisees or being in the franchise world, independent business owners as well. Obviously, that's a part of it. But at the end of the day, why am I doing it? I'm doing it it's a franchise development play and a franchisee support. The more people that know about our brand, the more people that are going to sign up for our brand, our services, the more people that are going to line up to hopefully be a potential franchisee.
Yo, this is the Streetwise podcast, where we help you level up your game, level up your leadership, and level up your life. I'm your host, Matthew McReynolds. I'm a multi-brand franchisee, and I'm a franchise consultant, which means I help people find, launch, and build their ideal franchise business. My main goal is to help you get off of zero and become the person that your dreams need you to be. Buckle up, get your popcorn ready, let's go. It's hot. All right.
What was that? Was that coffee?
Coffee, man. I took way too big of a gulp and burned my esophagus. We got EJ McCoy, the Pet Waste Millionaire, on the Streetwise Stage. Mr. EJ, what's going on, my brother? How you doing?
What's going on, Matthew? Thanks for having me. Doing good. Doing real good.
Yeah. What's a typical day like of a Pet Waste Millionaire? You guys got a lot of businesses going on, man. Maybe let's start with that. We'll break it all down.
That might be, first off,
there.
I'm of the opinion every entrepreneur has a different, it's totally different for every entrepreneur. I mean, that's the beauty in entrepreneurship, is the freedom that it can bring. And so my day may be very, very different than another Pet Waste Millionaire or another skilled trades or blue collar millionaire, so to speak. But what does my day look? So I guess to clarify, you want to know what my day looks like, or more?
I want to know what your day looks like.
Business.
I want to know what your day looks like, your day to day, and then we'll break it down from there.
Absolutely. Well, I won't get too, for the sake of time, otherwise we might be here for hours. But in a nutshell, my Wednesdays tend to be business administration, think insurance, those sort of things. I'm meeting with, I have 6 people that I directly work with, that you could say report to me, so to speak, even though I don't love to use those terms because I like us to be more like a team. But one of my oldest friends, one of my best friends, Jeremy Langlitz, my vice president of business administration at White Picket Team, he handles all of the details within my businesses. I'm clearly a little ADD, a little all over the place. I've got 15 things going on at once. He's the guy who's helping with all of the administrative details, whether that be workman's comp, other types of insurance, compliance issues and matters. He's working on all that stuff for me. So I spend my days on Mondays with him and working on that. I'm also have got meetings with some of my other team members that report directly to me. Ben Gonzalez, Vice President of Communications, Cynthia Hernandez, Vice President of Operations, and Michaela Sims, Chief of Staff. And so this is the team that is running really almost everything that I do, that I work on every day. And so I meet with them. We focus on Chorbie in the morning for an hour and a half. We focus on Scoop Soldiers for an hour and a half in the afternoon. And then in between, I'm meeting with Jeremy and all these other business administrations. So that's a typical Monday. And then I usually have the later part of the day. If I need to meet with a franchisee or something, I'm usually meeting with them later in the day on Monday or later in the day on Tuesdays. So fast forward to Tuesdays, and that's the morning I spend the entire morning with the 2 people that run Scoop Soldiers and Chorbie more than anybody else. They're working with the people and they're working in the nitty gritty day to day at
Come
Scoop
on.
Soldiers and Chorbie. And that's Cynthia Hernandez and Michaela Sims. And so I meet with them on Tuesdays mornings. Tuesday afternoons, I'm usually working on whatever projects I've got going on, which is usually just getting caught up on emails and such. It's supposed to be for projects, but Wednesdays is accounting and business planning in the mornings, as well as my weekly meetings with Ben and Jeremy, middle day. And then my meeting with my business manager at White Picket Team, Crystal Morris, Wednesday afternoons. And she's the one who's doing all accounts payable, accounts receivable, and payroll. So I'm meeting with her on Wednesday afternoons with Jeremy Langlitz as well. So a lot of business administration, if you've noticed here. And then Thursdays is more into the operations for Scoop Soldiers, our Scoop Soldiers operations. I've got a meeting with Brian Jones, our operations managers, on Tuesdays. I've got a meeting with my controller, Michael McCord, another gentleman that reports directly to me. We're talking all things accounting, cash flow. He manages the cash flow for me. He took that over for me about a year ago, and it had a huge positive impact on our business by me delegating one of the few things that I had a hard time delegating. I'm usually pretty good at delegating, but cash flow management was something that I finally delegated for the first time a year ago to somebody who frankly does it a lot better than I ever did. And so once I could actually let that go, it worked. So I meet with him on Thursdays, our Scoop Soldiers service company, where we are actually still scooping poop, our brick and mortar location, so to speak, our corporate owned locations.
Got it.
I work on that on Thursday mornings. And then Thursday afternoons can be a mixed bag. It can be whatever meetings need to be scheduled. A lot of media is scheduled on Thursday afternoons, creating a lot of media. And then almost all of Friday is media and networking. And that's the day. I know that was a little long-winded because that's the part of being me, the Pet Waste Millionaire. But
hey,
that's what a week looks like. And then in between all that, I'm probably traveling 2 to 4 times a month for personal and for business. But the beauty and the freedom in all that is all of those meetings I can do remotely. And I don't have to be in any of those meetings. The team I have that I work with in the day-to-day and in the week-to-week, they can basically do all of their jobs without me. And so that's what has allowed me to expand into so many different brands.
Beautiful.
And be so spread out is that I've got a lot of freedom because we've been able to delegate to a really awesome team.
So that's awesome. And yes, that was probably the most thorough answer that I've gotten from that question. But I appreciate it. Nobody matches the vibe that I want to receive. I need to know the day to day. It's the only way I can get better. I appreciate that.
That's the kind of thing I used to wish when I would watch and like really try to like take notes on, well, how are people doing all of this? Nobody ever goes into those details. So hopefully that meant something to some.
No, it's an important first question. I've got a quirky flow, but if anybody who listens to this consistently, they will catch how I try to guide the conversation. And that question is so important because the guest is coming on and they're a leader or they're a staple in their field in some way. And it's important. A lot of people don't understand what it takes to maintain that level of leadership over time. So I appreciate you.
In a nutshell, and if you wanted to simplify it, and like, EJ was way too long-winded, I need to edit all that out. In a nutshell, it all comes down to delegating to a team that you trust. And for me, my day-to-day is meetings.
Love it.
But I'm not ruled by meetings. I don't have to be in those meetings. Does that make sense? So
because you've got the people in place that are actually working, beating the drum. You are available, but it's not your presence or lack of presence does not limit the job from getting done. So my follow-up question is, how important was it to you to build out the team of leaders, and how long did it take for you to be able to build it out?
I'm thinking too long because nothing gets done fast enough in my eyes. Like I want it noon yesterday. Cynthia Hernandez, my VP of operations, her and I, our back and forth joke is that I want it by noon yesterday. At the same time, I'm kind of reasonable too. No, it took a long time to build that team. That team, I would say the average team member on that team has been with me for 3 years now. I'm ballparking that off the top of my head, but 3 to 5 years. I've got my longest running team members is at 8 years. That's part of that team. And it's just kind of, I've collected the team over the years and identified and almost always promoted from within, almost in every situation. But this is a team that has an enormous amount of trust, both in me, but me and them. But that's been key. And as far as how long did it take, that's been a natural gifting of mine. I'm lazy. It's a natural gift. I'm lazy. No, my natural instinct is to say, who can I get to help me with this? Who can I
Yeah.
delegate this task to? The entire purpose of my entrepreneurial journey started with the idea that I didn't want to have to do anything at any given time on any given day. I wanted to have the freedom to do and to do what I wanted. Now that was always business. I was always interested in business, but I wanted to do the things I wanted to have fun with, which is, as you can tell, talking. Uh, making decisions,
Yeah.
taking action, but really delegating that action. And that team has come together over the last 5 years and is 5 to 8 years, as I mentioned, and has been, they're invaluable.
Oh, that's awesome. Was there ever a point where you had to sacrifice, or maybe, because I know the answer is probably yes, where did you have to sacrifice kind of internally in order to build out the team to the quality that you have it at today?
When you say sacrifice, like you mean like as you promote people, there's some you have to find somebody else to take those other tasks. Is that an
So
example of sacrifice?
I appreciate the clarification, because you can take it in any way that you want. The term sacrifice is up for your interpretation. But I will say this: a lot of leaders that I engage with, especially franchise owners, they have a hard time giving up control, and so sacrificing control in order to be able to delegate to other people. Also, they don't see their team members as necessarily investments, or assets. More so, people are seen as liabilities sometimes. And so the sacrifice of financial resources in order to be able to delegate. But
Yeah,
I wanted to know how you took it.
the only way I took it is as you elevate people, you have to find people to replace them
Sure.
and train them up. And that does create some challenges in your business, and it
Okay.
does create
Come on.
established sacrifice. Here's an example. At Chorbie, Cynthia Hernandez, as I've mentioned, is my vice president of operations. She got hired in 2017 as my first salesperson, solely focused on sales, drive sales. And then 2 or 3 years later, as I realized her potential in operations and overall management of the organization, and her decisiveness and her ingenuity and her work ethic, as I started moving her into that role, I realized, well, gosh, I've got to replace her in sales. Well, we ended up replacing her with Michaela Sims, who now, and for the last 2 years, has also been removed from that sales role at Chorbie. And so I literally pulled from the last 2 rock star salespeople I had at Chorbie. I essentially set them up to run the entire organization. There was a little bit of a sacrifice in terms of
Yeah.
Chorbie sales because I have yet to replace that role that both of them filled for those years. And so that's one
Interesting.
way I could look at the sacrifice. As we built up this team to work on both companies, Chorbie and Scoop Soldiers, both of them at this current moment, we lead both companies. There's an element of sacrifice from one company to the other because we are focused on 2 separate companies. I'm actually working on this. A new season is coming where there's going to be some more focus in those 2 companies. But that's been somewhat of a sacrifice in the short term, focusing and looking at the greater good of the whole organization, multiple brands, Scoop Soldiers, Chorbie, White Picket Team, looking at those more as a whole rather than individually. There's been a little bit of sacrifice, but in the grand scheme of things, it'll all work out to the greater
What a
good.
great answer. I appreciate that. Okay. I want to go deeper into that, but we've got a time limit. And I think when the two of us get together, man,
Like I
we
said, I knew we
disrespect the
talked for hours.
clock. We disrespect the clock so much. So Ben's back there. We got to stay true to the timeline. So explain to me, explain to the listener, you guys got Chorbie, you've got Scoop Soldiers, you got White Picket. Explain what these organizations are, and then if you could give me a timetable on how
Yeah.
they came into existence. That
Okay,
would
I'm
be
going to do my
awesome.
best because that one could be an even longer answer than the Monday through Friday. No, I'll do my
Well,
best to keep it as short as possible. Timeline is I started mowing yards. That
all
company
right.
is what today is Chorbie. So I started mowing yards in high school, established a real business around the age of 21. That business, the roots of that business today is Chorbie, which is a lawn and landscaping business that also has expanded into plumbing, pools, pest control, and also focuses on a large number of lawn and landscape services, tree trimming. We've got arborists on staff. We've got lawn care and expert lawn technicians on staff that do fertilization, weed control, and so on and so forth. And then we've got an enormous mowing division where we're mowing a few thousand yards a week here in Dallas, Fort Worth, mostly Collin County, north of Dallas. So that's Chorbie, and that's the root of the roots of that business is what I started just 21 years old mowing yards.
Wow. Got it.
A few years later, started scooping poop. Thought to myself, you know what? I've built this mowing business. We're doing a couple $100,000 a year in revenue. This is back in 2010. And I had seen these pet waste removal trucks in an area of town that I was living and thought, man, I know I can do that. A seed for pet waste removal had been planted for me even back when I was in high school at the concept that you can make money scooping dog poop and going into people's backyards scooping dog poops. 2010, I partnered with my business partner, Josh Cahill, and we start what is today Scoop Soldiers. So that's our second business. Mowing yards becomes Chorbie. Today, we've got Scoop Soldiers, which back in 2010, we started as the second business. In 2014, I bought a company, made my first acquisition called Executive Lawn Care. Executive Lawn Care today is a business that mows a couple thousand yards a week. It's a direct competitor of Chorbie. And so because it's a direct competitor, I am an interest. I own the company, my business partner and I, two business partners, in fact, but I have no day-to-day operations in it. It's just a company that is managed by a group of managers and that we have hired as the three business owners, including myself. That's Executive Lawn Care. And then in 2019, we started a company called White Picket. White Picket Team Management is what it was called starting in 2019. And that was really to bring all of the management and the HR together as our organizations were growing well into the seven figures and were well on their way to be eight-figure businesses. We needed this management entity, and that's where White Picket came in. And just this year, White Picket Team Management became White Picket Team. We brought in additional partners, including Ben and Jeremy Langlitz. I mentioned Jeremy Langlitz, one of my longtime friends, VP of Business Administration. So we brought in partners, and we're literally taking that business, and we want to help influence the home services, but also the franchise world with the bookkeeping services. See, one of the things we have found that we are really good at, thanks to our controller, Michael McCord, and his leadership, but also the ongoing education of Jeremy Langlitz as he's getting his accounting degree. And of course, you've met Ben and his skill sets. We're really looking to point White Picket Team into these home service franchisor and independently owned organizations and helping them from an accounting standpoint, accounting and bookkeeping. We can do some unique things that most accounting and bookkeeping companies can't do. For example, weekly bookkeeping as opposed to monthly bookkeeping. So many people in bookkeepers inside of home services as a whole, whether you're a franchisor, franchisee, or just an independent operation, they're operating their books and they've got a bookkeeper that's coming and updating their books. Maybe it's February 5th or February 7th, and the books for January are being turned in and done, right? And you're working as a small business owner, you're working with your bookkeeper, and maybe they're asking you a few questions for something that happened 3 and 4 weeks ago. One of the things White Picket Team can do is we can actually get that set up to where it's done weekly. It's 52-week cycles as opposed to 12 monthly cycles, if that makes sense. Among other things. So I really feel like White Picket's got an awesome skill set in bookkeeping. And so we're looking to grow that and help and influence the industry through that. And of course, also alongside that, help home services professionalize, again, whether they're franchisors, franchisees, or independent operations, help them professionalize their business and help them grow as leaders.
Super interesting. You got my mind on so many different things right now. Before I forget, I do want to call out, you talk about Josh Cahill a little bit. You are aware that on LinkedIn, his title is The Real Pet Waste Millionaire. How do you feel about that?
That's a fantastic
Is that
question.
a thing?
It's yeah. So Josh and I, yes, he is the real pet waste millionaire.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you were okay with the fact that he has that. I haven't met him yet. I'm your guy. I want to make sure I'm backing you.
So that's hilarious that you brought that up because you know nothing about the story or the background behind that. So as we started developing this brand, Pet Waste Millionaire, and again, there's a franchise development play there, but there's also we just want to inspire entrepreneurship. One of my keynotes that I've given a few times is called "Not the Sharpest Tool." And a lot of my story is struggle as an entrepreneur. I do believe that my story could inspire a lot of people because I'm not that smart. Really, a lot of the keys to my success is just about discipline and about an ambition to learn and an energy. But I struggled in school and always struggled in school. To this day, I struggle with fully articulating myself. And I struggle a lot of times with listening because of my ADD and my dyslexia. I struggle with listening. I'm kind of a slow reader. And so to me, it's always been about building that team around me. But I say all that to say Pet Waste Millionaire is intended to inspire entrepreneurialism in this country and even beyond this country, that anybody can do this if you just want it, and you don't have to find something you absolutely love. I did not love mowing yards. I still don't love mowing yards.
Come
I
on.
didn't love scooping dog poop, but I loved business, and I wanted to do something that was going to make a difference. I wanted to do something that was a long-term legitimate business that would provide something to our communities. And so that's part of what Pet Waste Millionaire is. Now to the real Pet Waste Millionaire. Well, the funny thing is Josh is really the one who is credited with building our Scoop Soldiers business.
Okay.
And so he was the one in the ditches, so to speak, scooping. And as we were expanding from Dallas, Fort Worth to Austin and to Houston, in a lot of ways, I give him so much credit. He was the one traveling and literally like scooping the first house and the first 5 houses and the first 10 houses in these markets as we established these markets all over the country from Dallas, Fort Worth. And so for 10 years or longer, he really built that business, whereas I was building what is today Chorbie, and we were working as partners together on this. And so when we started PetWasteMillionaire.com and we started the T-Pig Takeover Tour, where we're getting awareness out there, that's my thing. And I went to Josh and I said, hey, you got to come along and you got to do some of your own media, and you're going to be the real Pet Waste Millionaire, because we've always had this back and forth. It's like a brother relationship where we're picking on each other.
Yeah.
We're always condescending each other, but it's all in love and it's all in fun. And so, yes, the real Pet Waste Millionaire is just part of our shtick, so to speak. He's the real Pet Waste Millionaire. I'm just the wannabe, but I'm really the one that's out there doing, creating the content and so on and so forth.
Yo, thanks for listening this far. It's at this point in the episode that I want to talk about Streetwise franchising, teaching, training, building. Streetwise franchising. As a franchise consultant, it's my job, it's my absolute pleasure, and it's my mission to help aspiring entrepreneurs find, launch, and build their ideal business. I've been a franchise owner for almost a decade. I know what it means to struggle. I know what it means to build a team. If you're ready to get off of zero, if you're ready to build something for yourself, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's get the conversation started. Don't wait until tomorrow to build your future. It starts today. Streetwise Franchising. Stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Let's get back to the episode. Oh, I love that. Thank you for indulging me there. So very interesting. I have to put this in now of how you got on my radar. I think this is a perfect time to talk about this. So we were launching Hero Home Services and telling my family about it. We were building it. It was a spinoff of Mosquito Joe. And what Mosquito Joe couldn't do, and what I was gaining skill set in, some of the handyman stuff, insulation, some landscaping, inside pest control, Christmas lights, all these things. And my brother-in-law was driving through McKinney and saw one of your Chorbie signs and was like, yo, Matthew, this is what you guys are building. He's got the jump on you guys. And I immediately deep dived all the social media. And so to me, you've always been this successful guy who has been building something and just slightly ahead to very ahead. Those are relative terms, but that's always how I've viewed you. And you talk about the pitfalls and the struggles in being in business and your background. I am curious about those specific business struggles, and maybe help me understand, what was it about business with all your other struggles in academia? What was it about business that you were able to attach yourself so passionately to amongst all the struggles and having to overcome all the stuff that you have over the last few years?
I believe that we've all got gifts. We've all got something that we are created to do, and that we're, a destiny, so to speak. And we've all got, and so some of that gets into my faith as a Christian. And so, I believe that it was always my gift to be a decision maker, to be a leader, and to be a business person. And so I think that was in me even before I knew anything about God-given gifts, so to speak. That was in me. Again, people that might have known me in middle school might have even told you, man, he's all business. I was not your average middle schooler, so to speak. I was ambitious. It doesn't mean that I was necessarily going out and making lots of money, because again, I'm not the sharpest tool. It took me a little while longer. I wasn't a child prodigy at all, but it was in me. Like I had the ambition and the interest, but I didn't really learn it. It took me years upon years to learn it. I was 24, 25 years old and mowing yards and making a decent living for a 24, 25-year-old independent business owner. I'm making a decent living. But I also can remember being 24, 25 years old saying, I'm not going to mow yards forever. That's not my thing. And it wasn't until, so I'll say this, there's a key piece to it, to recognizing that it's part of the journey. For literally a decade of my, or longer, I didn't have a full vision. To me, I was like still waiting on the thing. Like my entire 20s, I'm mowing yards and I'm doing pretty good by all accounts. I made a good, healthy salary at, for a 21-year-old, I was doing pretty good mowing yards. For a 25-year-old recently married, I was doing pretty good. I was a homeowner and so on and so forth. But I wasn't passionate, and I didn't love my business or see a long-term vision for my business until I was well into my 30s.
Now, at this point, were you still the one at 25? Were you still the one mowing the yards?
No, not usually.
Okay.
And I say
So
not
you had
usually.
built out the team by that point.
I had a team by the time. So I was 21 and mowing. And honestly, I never mowed for any significant length of time without delegating it to somebody else. Like I joked a second ago, I'm lazy. The whole reason that I became an entrepreneur was because I didn't want to have to mow for somebody else. I wanted to figure out how I can work my way out of mowing and into the office. And so that was my first goal. And I did that pretty quick. Within a matter of months, I worked my way to a point where I could have one crew and I could work the office and work the phone, so that I could have that extra level of freedom and didn't have to be out in the field. So that was something that I very much so looked at from a different perspective than I would say most people look at. They think they plan to mow yards for years when they get into the mowing business. To me, it was like, how quickly can I get this delegated to somebody else? And I was a single person with no kids. I lived on my own, but I didn't have a lot of responsibility. And so I had that advantage of that. And I kept my personal budget as low as I could, so that I could delegate to other people and invest in my business. And that's what people always say, invest in people, invest in people. That's exactly what I was doing. I didn't know that it was necessarily the exact thing to do, but it was working for me.
That's such a cool thing hearing from you, because it seems like from a very early age, entrepreneurial age, you caught on very quickly. It's like the concept from the E-Myth, Michael E. Gerber's book, The E-Myth, where you have the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur. And so many people, when they start their hustle, they're the technician and they stay there. And it's a process to become the true entrepreneur. And it seems like you mastered that so quickly, which makes me think, and I think this is a good time to add this caveat into the mix. How, in your position as a franchisor and somebody who's built these businesses up from scratch, and now you have franchisees taking on the business across the country, how do you create a balance in the mind of the franchisee who's coming in? This is their step into quote unquote entrepreneurship. They're not masters of the widget. They're buying a system, but you also have this concept out here where a lot of people are looking for passive investments, and that's not franchising. So how do you balance for your new franchisees, people that are new to business ownership, being a technician working the widget and then being the entrepreneur exclusively working on the business? I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And yes, that E-Myth Revisited is one of the best books out there, in my opinion. It's definitely a top 3, maybe even a top 2 book for me.
Facts.
And definitely something that came more natural for me in that delegation. As for our franchisees, I believe in terms of what you're talking about, I think it's good to have a healthy mix of franchisees that are very much so minded to being the technician, to working in their business. And if that's where they're geared towards, that's, in a lot of ways, that's the beauty of the Scoop Soldiers model. We can help them with the command center, the sales side of things, the side of things that maybe a technician, in the terms of the Michael Gerber E-Myth Revisited book, maybe isn't always going to be geared towards. And so we've got in some cases within our franchise organization, technician-minded franchisees, and I'm not going to necessarily always push for them. In a lot of ways, I'm very libertarian, so to speak, to each their own. Let them operate in their business if that's where they're skilled and where they're comfortable. Now, I'm always going to encourage personal growth, personal growth, personal growth, because that's a part of my journey. But that's up to them if they want that or not for themselves, whether they want to stretch themselves into someday becoming an entrepreneur inside of and maybe own multiple franchise opportunities, even outside of mine. I would love that. I love the idea of that, and even have that in some ways, because I've got franchisees that are serial entrepreneurs in their own right. And they've got, their partners, two or three, there's two or three of them that own a Scoop Soldiers, and they've all got different things going on. And in the case of what I'm thinking of, two of those three in one system one organization ownership group that I've got at Scoop Soldiers, two of the three are serial entrepreneurs. They own numerous businesses. And so they're always naturally working on the business, more so in the business. And of course, they have the resources to know how to do that and to grow their business in that way and to work with us. But I think it's healthy as a franchisor to have a mixed bag, have all of the above. Like, don't only go after the people that are serial entrepreneurs. You want them. I really like them, but I also really like the people that are more technician minded. By the way, the ones that are more technician minded also tend to be people that used to work for me as team members. And so that's another piece of it is we've got a big big percentage of our franchisees at Scoop Soldiers, not half, but almost half, maybe a third, that worked for us at Scoop Soldiers. And so they just love Scoop Soldiers. They're passionate about Scoop Soldiers. They tend to work in their businesses more, but they're so passionate about Scoop Soldiers that works. So I like a mixture, and I think it's about working individually on that individual basis on what that franchisee wants for themselves and for their business. And the beauty in the franchise business and at Scoop Soldiers specifically is that we can accommodate all of those wants.
That's such a cool concept that I don't know if I have heard a franchisor so eloquently put it like that. And I say that as a consultant, a part of a broker network. I get pitched all these different concepts multiple times a week, all the time. I'm getting people talking to me about their concept, and they're usually so defined in the avatar that they want as franchisees.
That's what they say you need. I agree. You need a niche. You want a niche in your franchise, an avatar but at the same time, I also think that diversity in this area is really good. Having a mix. Same with one of the things that's unique for Scoop Soldiers that is very much so not always, a lot of franchisors don't like this, is we've got a lot of franchisees that have full-time jobs. And they operate this business and are growing this business. They've each got their separate different kinds of goals, that each of them have a different goal for their business and to become full-time in their business. But yeah, we've got franchisees at different sizes. We got some franchisees that are almost $1 million a year in revenue in their business, and they have full-time jobs as well. And again, I understand why that's not always a good thing. Like, I can see the problems with it. Oh, I definitely can see the problems with it, but I also can see the good in it. Like, I like knowing that we're helping people go from being full-time employees to having an asset in a business. I love that concept. And I believe people can do it. Not everybody can do it, because we've also had some failure in that.
Sure.
But most have been successful.
This is going to be a good topic. This will be one of the clips and the little magic clips that we post out.
Oh yeah, so it's not very popular among franchisors.
Do a good job answering this next one. We'll have Ben back there just mugging you.
He's laughing right now.
Yeah. What are some characteristics or traits? Or I want you to visualize. Think about the dominoes that have to be in place for an individual to successfully operate a franchise business and keep their full-time job. Because you're right, sometimes it can be really bad, but when it goes well, it's such a beautiful thing. And I always want to convey that it's possible. However, I also don't think franchising should be pitched as a passive investment, the whole semi-absentee concept. What I want to do is provide education on what semi-absent or semi-involved, what does that actually mean on a day-to-day? So for you, thinking about those traits, hit me up.
One of the things I like about it is that usually our franchisees that have a full-time day job, for example, a full-time. And when I say a day job, that's different than they own multiple businesses. They're serial entrepreneurs. I'm talking about people, there's two different pieces.
Thank you for making that. I might have to ask you about the follow-up.
We're talking about the people, the franchisees that literally have W-2 day jobs. And they've
W-2 employees.
started this as a side hustle. They have not started this as a passive thing. They've started as a side hustle. And in most cases, something that could eventually get them to no longer needing that full-time. Full-time. They have to work the business still. But the reason I like the employment side of it is that they are not financially dependent on the business. And so the pet waste industry sometimes has a slow ramp up, depending on the part of the country and depending on how much you go out boots on the ground and really sign up your friends and neighbors that are dog owners. It's a slow ramp up. And so I like it because you've got people that you're not going to go bankrupt, scoop and poop. You can build it gradually and on the side. And the other thing to that, the other side of that is usually the people that have the full-time job, they are working on their business, not in their business, because they don't have the luxury to work in their business. They're hiring people to scoop, for example. They're not going out and trying to be the technician. They're literally hiring people, which is automatically training their brain to work on the business, not in the business. And so that has been a big benefit of it. I have seen it. You've got to have the time. You got to have the bandwidth. And so, that's a key part is if you're 32 years old with 3 kids under the age of 7, going and starting a franchise as your side hustle for pet waste removal and you've got a day job isn't probably the best solution for you. But if you've got kids in high school or college and you've been working for 25 years in your job and you've got a lot, and maybe you've got a lot of freedom in your job, thanks to COVID, a lot of remote aspect. And so maybe you have a lot of freedom in that day job. That's an example.
Ben, he knocked it out of the park.
You did great.
I feel like I could have gone longer on that, but I had to pause because, I'm self-aware, but I'm still long-winded.
No, that's really good. That's really good. You not only hit me in the chest being, mid young 30s, 3 kids under 7. I feel like you spoke into my soul there, but you made the bandwidth piece.
You've got to
talk about. That's the difference. That's the difference. And it's also the idea of you'll just hire people to do the work, but what does that mean to actually hire somebody? You've got to create the post. You've got to filter through people. You have to interview. You have to onboard. You have to put people through a probationary period and now give them feedback on their report. You have to coach them and manage. That's still very intentional, even though you are not the one actually scooping the poop.
You have to have the bandwidth. If you were unavailable 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, completely unavailable in your full-time day job, it's not going to work. You've got to have some flexibility.
We talk in a few hours a week in order to be able to answer a phone call, and then you work the evenings potentially after you get off. Is that what you mean?
Very often. Okay. Yeah. But keep in mind, again, the job of a franchisee at Scoop Soldiers is pretty honed into work boots on the ground efforts, which can be done at any time. It can be done nights and weekends, but work boots on the ground, getting awareness for your business, do that digitally through online communities and so on and so forth. And other than that, it's simply scheduling, dispatching, and making sure work gets done. The sales process, the what we call our command center, which is our sales process, billing and accounts receivable, all of these things are done by the franchisor through an administration fee.
Beautiful.
So, you've got some very specific focuses, the truck and the people driving the truck to get the work done. That's what you got to focus on.
Now, what about the distinction? You made the distinction early. What does that look like to somebody who's more of a serial entrepreneur when they're coming on and they've got time? That's more of, guy like me. My time can be super. Yesterday, I had meetings all throughout the day. The day before, I got to spend the afternoon with my kids. We got a lot of projects launching right now, and I've got to be available. But at the same time, I'm not the one painting. I'm not the one spraying. So what does that look like on the different side? Is that easier for somebody to come in your opinion? Okay, break that down for me then.
Yes. I would. So we've got other franchisees that are kind of cut from this cloth. They're serial entrepreneurs. They own numerous businesses, and Scoop Soldiers, their Scoop Soldiers franchise is just one of them. In our case, and that tends to be an older demographic. They're not usually in their 20s or 30s. They're in their 40s or even their 60s.
Right.
In fact, specifically our very first franchisee, the one that signed on with us literally the month that we had our FDD done in August of 2019. So 5 years coming up here. Still, they've continued to expand. I think almost every year they've been in business with us for 5 years. But he is actually, we call him Grandpa T Pig. He came up with, he's the one that came up with turning poop into gold.
Love it. Yeah.
Grandpa Ron, he's a serial entrepreneur. I actually bought Executive Lawn Care from him in 2014. The mowing business that I own, that I mentioned earlier, that company I bought from him. 5 years later, he bought a Scoop Soldiers franchise as one of his businesses. He owns a barbershop. He's got an equity stake in a chain of barbershops.
Look at that.
He owned an ATM machine business. He owned a salon suites. I think he's getting to where he's mostly retired, so he really doesn't have a lot of those things anymore. But he's a longtime serial entrepreneur who is now semi-retired. And so the serial entrepreneurs bring a whole different piece to it. First off, I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I tend to be able to really sync well with this type of avatar, so to speak. But they tend to be able to be collaborative. They know that they can help us collaborate. Well, everybody's collaborative with us, but the serial entrepreneur comes in, and as long as it's the right pick, and as long as they're not used to really being solo and on their own and making all this, then they become a significant collaborator and a really good advisor. And in a lot of ways, like I say, he's semi-retired or more retirement age. So he's Grandpa Ron. He's like an advisor to the overall organization.
Oh, I love that. All right, moving along, man. We're touching the fourth quarter here. What about franchising just ticks you off, man? What grinds your gears with franchising?
We got to be careful here. I know that a lot of your audience.
Hey, they're listening.
First off, nothing about franchising directly necessarily frustrates me or angers me outside of the obvious stuff. If you're not careful in the franchise world, if you're not careful, you start selling a dream a little bit too hard, a little bit too much. Those are obviously outliers. And so, in other words, when you've got a franchise concept and you're just selling it, but there's nothing to back it up, you're just a good salesperson, that gives the industry a bad name. And there's examples of that throughout history, rare examples, but they still give the industry a bad name. So I don't particularly love that about the industry. Other than that, I love the industry.
I was going to say, let's flip it and hit me with what you love the most about it now. Because you're in it, man. You're doing it. You're building.
Yes, it's win-win-win for all parties. So when I was coming up in the lawn mowing business or in the pet waste removal business, if you look around at most of those in that industry, whether you're pet waste removal or whether you're lawn mowing, you as a business owner, you build your business up to a point where you're making, I don't know, let's use an example. I'm just using an example here, a couple $100,000 a year in your lawn mowing business. That is like you're in the top 10% of all lawn and landscape businesses once you've reached that point. And what normally happens is everything stops. You've reached your goals as an entrepreneur. And so for me, as I reached that point, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, I'm looking around and I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm very much so believe in entrepreneurship. So I'm looking around at my team members and I'm like, how do I provide them opportunity? How do I provide my team members who are maybe a technician or maybe managing a team of 3 or 4 or 5 people? I started looking around and realizing I can only have so many managers. I can only promote so many people from being a lawn technician to becoming a manager of that department, so to speak, right? That can only happen so many times in the traditional corporate structure. But when you bring franchising into it, in theory, everybody could potentially be an owner. And I know everybody can't, but in theory, everybody could. And so I really believe that franchising is like entrepreneurialism on steroids. It creates more pies. It creates more opportunities.
Yes.
Done right, it's win, 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 win for all parties. You could keep saying win, 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 depending on what parties. But when it's done right, it gives equity. It gives all parties involved, or can do that. And so I didn't come to that conclusion like I knew of franchising for years, and for years kind of thumbed my nose to it in a lot of ways. I didn't like the idea that I would have other ownership in my brand. I didn't like that initial idea because I thought to myself, and this maybe is a piece that can also go bad on the negative side of franchising, and maybe we'll shift back to there. My ADD go back and forth, but on the
works for me.
If you've got 100 franchisees and all of them are barking at you about something different, that was the thing I was initially afraid of. That was what I was initially afraid of was, I have 100 franchisees or 50 franchisees or a dozen franchisees, and then I have to keep all of them happy. it was honestly a negative attitude towards it. It was just my own negative. I shifted that to say, no, you can learn from them. They can innovate with you. You are in partnership with those franchisees. As I shifted my attitude, it became very clear. And I'll say in my 5 years experience as a franchisor, your attitude matters a lot. How you approach it matters a lot. And I'm not perfect. Sometimes I get something from a franchisee that gets me all, negative, but if you approach it correctly and with the proper attitude and intent, you're going to have a win-win-win situation.
Love that. I have nothing of value, I think, to add to that. I agree with that sentiment, and I appreciate you for saying it. My next question is two-part, and it might be our last, depending on how we're doing with time. Ben, just jump in whenever we gotta cut this thing off. But what do you define this? Let me rephrase that. How would you define this season or this chapter of your life and of your journey? That's the first part. And the second part is, what are you reaching for? Like, what's the next big thing that as soon as you achieve it, you're like, yes, on to the next now? Like, what's the big thing that you're reaching for in this season?
Okay, so the first question, this is what the first question reminds me of, where I'm at, like right now in this season. This is a season well, frankly, most seasons of my life test my patience. But what comes to mind is it's testing my patience, because I'm not naturally a patient person. So my day-to-day focus, outside of my meetings and working with the leadership team, is developing and building a following on Pet Waste Millionaire.
There it is.
That is way outside of my comfort zone. Way outside of my comfort zone. I'm used to being outside of my comfort zone.
You're great at it. It's going well.
Thank
I've
you.
been loving it. And I'm glad we're plugging this at the end. Great job.
Yes, it is.
Again,
Good timing. But putting Pet Waste Millionaire and putting myself out there and getting on video, on one hand, is something that I have aspired to do, even going all the way back to being a young 20-something, that I always had a desire to influence, a desire to help people, and to make a difference.
Yeah.
And so I can see the benefits of what Pet Waste Millionaire and how I can do that on one hand. On the other hand, I've also had this like double-mindedness, and always have. Like, the other half is like, well, I would rather just sit in my garage and daydream all day. And I say in my garage because I work out of my garage. If you watch any of my content, you can pretty quickly figure that out. I work out of my garage and my
beautiful garage.
Thank you.
Beautiful garage.
And I want to have you over again sometime.
Been there twice. I'm down for a third. Come on.
For sure. But yeah, the comfort zone, I use the analogy. I've never historically used this analogy. I literally feel like I'm just kind of dangling on the cliff in so many ways on the comfort zone. I'm right there, I'm pushing those limits. And I say that with all positivity. Like, it's something I'm just self-aware of. It's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. Not only is it uncomfortable, but it's a years-long thing. Like, it's not something that's going to happen for me in a matter of a few months. See, I come from lawn mowing and pet waste removal. We get customers by the day. It's not like it takes me, there's some sales out there, some businesses out there where you might make 2 sales a year, and you're just grinding and grinding and grinding to make those 2 sales a year. I don't have the patience for that. Naturally, it's more, I like getting that dopamine, that adrenaline push every time we sign up 50 customers a day at Scoop Soldiers, and 30 or 40 or 50 at Chorbie. I like that quick adrenaline rush. And the Pet Waste Millionaire brand, and as you're building it and as you're doing this media stuff, I've been following you for a couple of years, kind of on this same journey. It's a long game, a really long game.
Tell me about it.
I already forgot the second half of that question.
The second question is, which you might have already kind of answered it, is what is it that you're reaching for? Like, what is it that when you achieve it?
Yeah, I'll explain. I'm not really very good at that. Yeah, I got it. I'm not usually pretty good at that. Usually because I tend to live more so in that fantasy future world, trying to create what I'm looking for. Sure. I stay there. So by the time I get there, I have a tendency, if I'm being fully self-aware, to say, I've already been there. Like, I've already been expecting XYZ to happen for so long. It's like, when it happens, it's kind of like, okay, great. Okay, now let's move, onward and upwards. At the same time, our goal, we want 10,000 followers. That'll be, I think, a good foundation to then 100,000 followers. And that'll be a good foundation to 1 million followers. And the purpose in that is 2 parts. It's franchisee support and it's franchise development. The purpose in Pet Waste Millionaire brand, in terms of what will I get out of it in the long term, okay, I want to make a difference. I want to provide influence, and I want to help elevate all business owners, not just people that are interested in being franchisees or being in the franchise world, independent business owners as well. Obviously, that's a part of it. But at the end of the day, why am I doing it? I'm doing it for, it's a franchise development play and a franchisee support. The more people that know about our brand, the more people that are going to sign up for our brand, our services, the more people that are going to line up to hopefully be a potential franchisee. And so
Got it.
that's what I see for the long-term future of the brand, Pet Waste Millionaire, and what I'm focusing on the day-to-day. I believe we can grow all of our business lines if we can properly take advantage of the time and history that we are to be able to do these podcasts and to be able to do organic media the way we are. I mean, don't get me started on that. We could talk another 45 minutes. But in the opportunity, I see it as an entrepreneur. And so that's what my focus is in the day to day.
Man, well, thank you. I appreciate you so much. I gotta say that on these shows, at least for me, like I'm looking forward to being on the Pet Waste Millionaire. I know I got an episode coming out soon. It was great hanging out with you guys over the last couple months. But when I think about this show, there's a topic, right? And a storyline that we go down, but there's a general vibe and an energy that I want each episode to actually embody. And you, my friend, embodied the essence and the energy of what I want this show to be about. So thank you,
Matthew. And
so much.
Let me say, it's been a pleasure to get to know you. You're one of my new favorite people as I've gotten to know you these last few months. But and I told you this off camera the other day when we met, but I want to say it here as well. I mean, you've been an inspiration to me in a lot of ways. As Ben started really pushing me to do a lot of this media in the last 2 to 2.5 years, is kind of when I recognized, and I remember, I think you reached out and we connected through either LinkedIn or Facebook or maybe both. And I recognized, well, here's the local franchisee for Mosquito Joe's. And so we connected and I started seeing you creating this content. And so again, that's been inspiring for me as well, because we've been on this journey together, so to speak, and it's been great getting to know you the last few months.
Man, well, that's a huge compliment. Where can the people find the podcast? Is all everywhere? The
Absolutely,
podcasts are out.
All major platforms. Pet Waste Millionaire podcast. We've got a new podcast we're launching pretty soon. It'll be called Find Your Gold Live, which will be bringing on entrepreneurs, talk about how they found their gold. We found it in poop. How did you?
Nice.
So that's coming soon. Lots of other stuff coming soon. But Pet Waste Millionaire on all major platforms, and then of course our podcast, Pet Waste Millionaire, on Spotify and iTunes and all of the major platforms. Did I say that right, Ben? PetWasteMillionaire.com.
There we go. Thanks, Ben. Thank you, Ben. Man. There we go. We got to give that guy all the shout outs.
Oh yeah.
And to the listener, thank you so much for making it this far. Man, you got a ton of value. Hit these guys up, follow them, and until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.
Awesome, Matthew. Thank you.
All right, everybody. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Hey, if this episode added any value to your life at all, please like it, share it, give me a 5-star review. It's the only way that this show is going to gain traction and help more people achieve their dreams. If you're ready to start your franchise journey, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's set up a time to talk. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.